It's 7:30 on Tuesday, September 20th. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Darien Board of Finance to order. The first first item on our agenda is an adjournment to executive session to discuss certain items related to the purchase of real estate. Do I have a motion to move us into executive session? Paul moved. Rob seconded. All those in favor? Okay. Channel 79, we're going to stand adjourned as we go into executive session. Okay. First item on the public session comment is on the public session is public comment. Jen, has anyone emailed in saying they want to speak?
No, they have not.
Okay. And we have no one in the audience. So next thing we're going to do is move on to a bunch of fiscal year 2022 transfers. We have basically 16 transfers that I would characterize are all in part of closing out the various fund balances, or I should say the various accounts within our operating budgets.
Correct.
So, Jen, do you want to give a?
So it's we do this every year at the end of the year. There's some accounts where maybe we can't make a good projection of what the overage is going to be. That sometimes happens with overtime or with things like utilities, truck repairs, motorized equipment repair, that kind of thing. So usually if the department has a source in mind that they know they're going to have surpluses in other accounts, we allow the account to continue running because we know we have funds to cover it. We don't want to keep coming back to you and chasing our tail, projecting what it's going to be. So that's what most of these are. One that stands out to me, it's a little different, is our accrued leave redemption. We're requesting $205,000 from various accounts. That's for our payouts when people separate from service, if they retire and they get a vacation or sick payout of their accrued time, or if they just resign and get their payout of vacation time that's on the books. We've had in the last couple of years, we've had some pretty hefty payouts. We know that there are a good number of people who are eligible to retire, so this is actually one that we'll be taking a look at in the next budget and see if we need to bump it up a little bit. But in theory, you have vacancies or you hire at a lower level, and that offsets a good portion of the accrued buyout.
But you all haven't, we have in recent years modified the policy about how much they can carry, right?
Right, for non-represented employees, we've brought it down to just 5 weeks of vacation. Previously it was up to 10 weeks. The police can only carry over 1 week, and I'm drawing a blank on if we made any headway with Public Works or Town Hall. I don't think we did. And then sick payouts, those have been closed to Public Works, Town Hall, and non-represented for several years. And for the police, I think it was 2015 or 2016. So new employees are not eligible for sick payouts.
Yeah, I thought Public Works, we decreased it for new employees coming in.
Yes, we may have.
But that obviously very low turnover, so that takes.
Yep.
Jen, do we know how many retirees there is for that 205 number?
On that one, I didn't put it in there. I just gave you the dollar amount.
Just a ballpark. Is it 2? Is it 15?
No, it's definitely more than 2. I think we probably had 5 or 6-ish.
Okay. And you said with the budget coming up this year, we're going to bump in a little bit?
Yeah, I think we need to. We've been reluctant to do so, and we've been keeping it at 100,000, but we're consistently going well over that. So
yeah,
maybe a modest 125, 150, somewhere in there.
It's kind of throwing a dart a little bit, but it's probably worth throwing a 125, 150.
Yep, just something, a little something more at it.
Mm-hmm.
Jen, in terms of large numbers, the DPW, the 178,000 for the solid waste, which is offset by more than enough of revenue. Have we ever thought about creating a similar type of program as we did with the Parks and Rec programming fees?
I think that this year is unusual. I don't think we've had this problem in the past. So I can speak to it a little bit, but with gas prices up, haulers were choosing to come here because it was closer rather than travel further where they would normally go. So we had a large increase in the volume coming in.
Okay.
So as a result, our revenues are also up, but that hasn't typically happened I think it's just unusual circumstances, and I don't think this is necessarily, like the Park and Rec Program Fund is truly a self-supporting program. This is a little different, and I'd be reluctant to set up its own fund just for this.
On the legal counsel, it says tax appeals. Is that commercial tax appeals? Because I thought residential is every 5 years, so you could, I mean, unless people are moving.
I think
in
there's still some ongoing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, some of those can take a while to settle, but it would be a mix of commercial and residential. So, kind of an administrative thing, what we can do is, if you are comfortable, someone can make a motion to approve all of these together. And you could make a motion to approve the transfers as presented. If there's any that someone wants to pull out and vote on separately, we could identify those and then just make a motion and vote on that one separately.
Just a question on the DPW, the transfer of 178 with only, and 45 of it coming from the Board of Finance contingency. Where's the balance coming from?
Other accounts within DPW that had surpluses.
Got it.
I'm more than happy to make a motion to put these all together.
Yep. And just to be clear, like all of these, if I look at some of the, are the transfers that we're approving only the ones where it's coming from a different account?
You have to approve any that are over $5,000 or are crossing departments. So anything that comes from contingency, that's an automatic that it comes to you.
Yep.
But like the accrued buyout one, nothing's coming from contingency. We can find it in other accounts, but it's across departments because we're pulling from some salary accounts as well as within the benefits department.
Okay. Well, is everyone okay with passing these with one single motion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So I guess I'd entertain a motion to approve all of the transfers.
Just moved. Property, I've already did it.
Oh, I-
Second.
I think I was more asking more than
Okay.
anything else. Or just stating that I
Didn't want
would.
to get, wait.
I guess I just wanted to make sure we were all sort of on board with what we were doing. So I guess I'd entertain a motion to approve all of the transfers listed in our agenda here, from and within and around the Board of Selectmen's operating budgets and so forth as outlined in this memo.
So moved.
Rob? John seconded? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay.
So the last item on there in that fiscal 22 section, item 18, is administrative transfers. So these are the ones that Kate and I have the authority to approve. And I usually bring you a list in January and then again at year end, just summarizing how many we've had, and then which department, how much dollar amount, count, that kind of thing. So for fiscal year 22, we had a total of 152 administrative transfers that were approved. They totaled $173,000. And you can see the breakdown among the departments. The largest one that pops out is building department, but that was actually, we did use our discretion on that one. They had budgeted for a full-time position, but they were able to utilize a seasonal and temporary position that they didn't have budgeted for, so Kate and I approved moving from full-time to seasonal temp, because it wasn't for a new position or anything that had a long-term impact. So 39,000 of the 41 you see there for building is that one situation.
Got it. And I think in that instance, I think where we said it's, as long as it's not adding a new FTE or new partial
Right.
FTE, we gave you guys the discretion on that.
Yes. And then as to the comparison with prior years, about the same number of transfers, but we're seeing the dollar amount going down. We started reporting on this in fiscal 19. We had $245,000 and went down to 222, 198, and now we're at 173. So I think that we're moving in a good direction. People having really solid budgets and not needing to move things around too much. So that is informational only, and you do not need to take action on it.
Okay. The next item is related to the HHR.
Right. So back in the spring, if you recall, we appropriated funds from the Board of Finance Capital Reserve to get HHR up and running for their design consultants, that sort of thing, just to kind of bridge that gap until we had a bond appropriation. Anything that did get charged here has been reclassified to the bond because it can be reimbursed by bond funds. And so what I'm looking to do is close out the $102,500 back to the capital reserve. Typically, we bring closeouts to you in the fall. I'll be bringing your full list of other closeouts in October, but I wanted to get this one to you now because it does have an impact on the next item.
Okay, so are there any questions on this? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to close out the $102,500 consultant project within the HHR project fund and bring that back into the Board of Finance capital reserve. David moves. Rob seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. Okay, next item is number 20 is to discuss and take action on a request to transfer $169,000 for the Hanson Road Bridge and for repair and design services. Mr. Gentile's here. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you for having me. Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works for the town of Darien. In front of you have a request for a transfer for the Department of Public Works to acquire the services of engineer to design the replacement bridge at Hanson Road. A little background on it, if you folks haven't heard. We did notice back in July some defects at one of the bridge abutments. Our crews out doing their normal work came across them, did a little bit quick investigative work, noticed that there had been some additional cracking on one of the abutments and notified the Assistant Director of Public Works, at which time we brought out an instructional engineer to quickly start looking at this bridge. We had a report finished up in August. From that report, we were able to determine that a full bridge replacement will be needed there at this location. We did look at some of the design drawings to see if there were anything that we could pick up of maybe a reason or a rationale for this thing to happen now. We did find a 7-foot deep scour hole at that front bridge or the north bridge abutment, northwest corner. That had led to the failure of the footing to where it's dropped a couple inches. The bridge is located over Stony Brook River. It is between the intersections of Hummingbird Lane and Linda Lane. It does span 15 feet, so it's less than 20, and that's going to be critical in a second when I review some of the funding options that we've looked at. It is 30 feet wide and constructed in 1936. Just to update some information that's been out there that's incorrect. This bridge was last inspected in 2016, not in 1996. The bridge is now currently safe to drive over if you've been there. I understand some of you folks have seen it. We have put a steel plate across the bridge. We've had barrels placed to keep the traffic away from that edge of the roadway, away from that bridge abutment corner. Our structural engineer says if, as long as we keep the traffic away from it and monitor it regularly, which we are doing, it will continue to carry the loads for any vehicles or trucks that are going it right now. The plate that's there is just to distribute some of the weight that goes across it and not having it just focused as a point load on top of that bridge abutment as you cross. The other piece that we did some work on is we did a temporary repair. It was scheduled for the 13th of this month and it was completed that day. We filled that scour hole in with large riprap, about 3 truckloads, just to get it up to its normal depth. What that's going to do is protect for any additional scouring underneath the footing. Currently, that footing is about 5 feet deep in concrete. It's 5 foot in depth. The drawings are calling for 2.5, maybe 3 feet. We were unable to, when we did our investigation, find any of the piles that were supposed to be there in this design from 1936. We'll do a little bit further investigative work when we go through our design process, but the belief is that this footing is thicker for one reason only, to carry the load on its own without piles. Unfortunately, I don't believe it's stood the test of time right now with the scouring and the failure that we see. So we are prepared to move ahead with this design. We do have a consultant on board. We do have an estimate to bring us through the permitting process and construction drawings, so that we can put this out to bid. The long process is the review process from the DEP. We'll have to take a look at it. EPC is already on board here in town. We've met with them. We had permission to go out and do the temporary repair. We are still looking at a 9-month timeline before we can put this out to bid. We'll continue to push the consultant quicker, but the first thing I need to do is get them on board with a contract.
Is that 9 months until they could start, or just 9 months until we would have all the design work done?
I'm looking at 9 months to get all the design work done. I think they gave themselves a little bit of leeway there.
Okay.
I'm hopeful they can get it done quicker so that we can get it out to bid sooner. They're predicting somewhere between anywhere 3 to 4 months of construction. That's so that we can keep traffic on there. The only way to get it done a little bit faster, maybe significantly faster, is if we were to close that road for a certain period of time. Looking at detours right now. So we're just trying to look ahead to see how we're going to lay out this construction as we start the design phase. So, and lastly, it does abut. We have property owners to the south, Weber and Country Club to the north. They have been cooperative with us. They've been working with us to clean the area out so we can get in there to do some of our work, monitoring the stream. I was out there after the storm the other night. The flows coming down there were pretty good, but the placement of the stone has helped quite a bit with the stabilization of that area and the embankments that are there. Here to answer any questions that you folks may have.
Ed, Jim had asked that we watch the Board of Selectmen presentation that you made, and it seemed to be very thorough and so on. A few things occurred to me, however, listening to it, having lived about 50 feet away from that bridge for a couple of decades. I've watched it overflow a number of times, and most recently, I think what the storm might have been called Ida, closed the road. And I'm wondering whether, in fact, we have a bridge repair problem, or whether we, in fact, have a flood control water management problem, and whether, in fact, it ought to be studied from that perspective, because I would assume that the town doesn't necessarily want to have, particularly with the threat of global warming, more frequent, a higher frequency of road closings because the bridge is unable to, the culvert's unable to handle the water flow coming off of Weyburn. I think you had mentioned, to the Board of Selectmen that a consultant was doing the hydraulic study. Would that tend to raise those issues?
Well, with any type of bridge work, there is a hydraulic component to it. And that component is going to drive you to look at two aspects, hydraulically and hydraulically. The water coming off the areas and the water being forced through the bridge. The one piece that we have to match out there is what has been produced from FEMA. There's a FEMA map, there's a FEMA study, there's mapping that shows exactly what the bottom of that river is supposed to look like when they did their study and predicted where north it would flood because of that restriction of the bridge. We have to mimic that. We have to replace it in kind.
So you have to force it to flood.
Unfortunately, if I was to, let's say, eliminate the bridge, remove the bridge entirely, put a bigger bridge there so it's not an impact, the folks downstream would be impacted by that. So
it's true.
You need to be very, very careful about what you do and what you increase in size when you're looking at culverts or bridges. Some of the some of the impacts from these storms has showed us that the FEMA flood mapping is pretty darn accurate. It's going to flood during a 100-year storm. It's going to flood during a 500-year storm, and you need to know that. If I'm alleviating your flooding problem, downstream, Mr. Cardone's property may be flooding because of that. So that is, I've been asked many times, why don't I put just a bigger culvert in the road? And that would be great if I could put a bigger culvert in all the way down to the coast.
Well, of course, my problem is basically a design issue, and Rob's problem is an act of God issue. I mean, the water goes down there, you gotta deal with it, right? It's God made it rain. Just kidding.
Yeah, but I think
Well-
what Ed is saying, you know,
I know what
you know,
he's-
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we kind of had that in with Intervale, like near me, when that happened, right?
Yeah.
We opened up a bunch of pipes kind of north of where I live, and the concern, and it hasn't happened, thank God, like for 5 or 6 years, we were worried if more water was coming our way. And I remember you saying at one of the meetings, at low tide, high tide, the water's just basically going to the sound.
Mhm.
And if we can't do anything about it, especially in the storm, and then you come back to the God part on your side, right? It's just.
There are three, I'm sorry.
I was saying, is it basically like the 15-foot by 5-foot area that we need to work in? We can't change or alter that such that it would change the direction or flow of the water from what it was before.
It would cause if I was to open it up bigger, the flooding on Weburn would be less. Flooding downstream would be more, right? That would be the impact. And then those flood maps that we have downstream, they would have to be changed. So they would impact more properties downstream. So understanding that whenever I look at a drainage area or a flood area, there's a couple things that I look at. One of them is it a depressed area? Is it a floodway area? Is it a flood prone area? Those things are all important to look at. This is important to the fact that our normal bridge guy that we use that came out here and gave us this initial report, I had to switch to a different consultant to make sure that I had a hydraulic component and an engineer that knew our systems here in town and has worked here in town for over numerous years. And that's why we're using the consultant we are right now, because that piece is so important to make sure that we mimic it and copy it and not impact upstream or downstream.
Okay.
Hey, just a quick question. So this bridge was inspected in 2016. Do we have a normal rotation for bridge inspections, those type of things?
The state does. For everything over 20 feet, they have a routine schedule to come out, and I get those reports. These smaller culverts or bridges, which we have about 23 of them, are not on a regular schedule, but they're an extended schedule. And I've been asked, and the first selectman has asked me to go around and let's check the other ones while we're doing it. Now, I've checked quite a few of them because of the storms that we've had lately and because of the work that I needed to do by multiple locations. But there are a few that I need to go and look at and make sure that we're not having problems with it. This bridge is in particular because it has footings, it has abutments. Some of them are just pipe culverts, double barrel culverts crossing some of the roads. Hanson has one of those closer to the Weburn entrance, if you will, further west if you go west. They have the same type of situation, different culverts, not a bridge.
Thanks.
I did say I would talk about the funding part of it. I just want to mention that because of the width of the bridge, the span of the bridge is only 15 and not 20 feet or greater, funding sources are limited. Lot SIP doesn't cover that type of bridge, less than 20 feet. The only thing that does that we could qualify for is the state local bridge program. They open up their applications on April 1st and they closed on May 31st. So if they do fund it again and do come back with more funding in next March or April, I will put an application in for this bridge for the funding.
And how does that funding, is that a partial, is that a match, is that a full
50-50,
reimbursement?
it's a 50-50 match,
Okay.
my recollection.
And you think it's unlikely that we would actually start the project before that April, May, if they were to come out again in April, the April, May time period?
It would be unlikely that we start before they come around with funding. We may just hit it right, that we get the opportunity to get some funding. The bridge still is in stable condition. We're not having any issues out there. And we could hold on a little bit longer to at least get some funding for that bridge. We're looking at anywhere between 1.3 to 1.5 million. just on a really rough estimate right now. You know, I think 700,000, 750 from the state would be nice to compensate for some of the work.
Okay, any other questions, Fred? Okay, thanks, Ed. Well, as we think about the actual financing of it, I sort of, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the way we should think about it is, one is timing. There are certain ways that we can approve this, which will give Ed the money tonight when he leaves to start this design work. And there are other ones that would put through a process, you know, which could involve like another month to go to the RTM. And then the question is, how do we actually pay for it? So we have sufficient money after this transfer back of the $102,000 that we just closed down from like the sort of temporary HHR appropriation that we made. So we could choose to approve it tonight from our the Board of Finances, I should say the capital reserve was within the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenses, and just fund 169 tonight and be done with it. That would, I think, bring our balance down, you know, near the beginning of our fiscal year, relatively low in our capital reserve. I think that would bring it down to like under 50,000.
It'd be about 96, I
Okay,
think.
about 90,000, 96,000. So that would be one way. The second way, if we wanted to approve this and sort of allocate the money tonight, is we'd approve it out of our capital reserve, and then we would send either a bonding resolution to the RTM, just given that Ed said this entire project, depending on whether we have the state grant, you know, could be upwards of 1.3, 1.5 million. And then if and when the RTM approves that bond resolution, we would effectively reimburse or kind of repurpose this 169 back into our capital reserve. Or we could send, we could appropriate out of our capital reserve tonight and then send a special appropriation to the RTM where they would just appropriate 169,000 out of fund balance. And effectively the same thing, reimburse our capital reserve. My view is kind of moving our capital reserve down, because issues like this do pop up, below $100,000 probably leaves us too low to deal with sort of emergency, you know, situations that pop up. And if this was only $169,000, sort of a one-time charge, I think that's something that we could, may not bond. We could just send it for a special appropriation and come back. But because I think we know that there's additional expenses, either $750,000 or $1.3 million coming down the line, I would recommend that we approve it tonight out of our capital reserve. Allows Ed to kind of get moving right away, and then send a bonding resolution to the RTM to ask them to approve it. And then subsequently, when we know more about the overall cost and whether or not we're getting state funding, we can revise that bonding resolution, send it back to the RTM to be revised upward, and all of these expenses that we approved tonight would be eligible to be bonded, sort of retroactively.
You did a very good job.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the, I guess, should I do two separate motions?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the $169,000 out of our capital reserve for this project? Dave moves. John seconds. All those in favor? Okay. Then, Jen, I believe we have in here,
Item number 22 is the bond authorization. And the difference in dollar amount is just for issuance costs.
okay. So may I have a motion regarding an appropriation and bond authorization for the Hampton Road Bridge Design Services for $169,530. David moves. Rob seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous. And I guess just to clarify here, we approved 169 even out of our capital reserve, and then the extra 530
Yep.
to go to the RTM for.
Yep,
the round.
169,530 for the bond.
Okay. Okay. Financial report?
Actually, we have item 21 to receive an update on Gorms Pond Dam lease and repairs.
Okay. Wayne, do you want to give us an update on?
Sure.
I think we spoke about this probably last about 4 or 5 months ago.
That sounds about right, yes, sir. One of the things that we tried to do per your suggestion was to translate, if you will, the lease, which is a little bit hard to read in 1920. I give Patty the credit for that. Good copies for you.
It's called an unofficial transcription.
Thank you.
I think the short version, if you will, is that the town owns the bridge, the town owns the roadway. The question as to who is the owner of the dam is a little bit more complex. As best we can tell, it is owned by a number of individuals who are heirs of the Gorham family. We have gone so far as to hire an expert to go out and try to locate some of those folks. He has been successful in locating 1 or 2 of them. He's given us some contact information about them. We will try to locate them. But I think in the long run, we probably are not going to be able to find all of the people that own the bridge. As a result of which, if we were to attempt to take title to the dam, there's a process by which we can do it, which would be by condemnation. And that would not be terribly complex here. We would have to get authority from the RTM to do that. We would have to determine a value of the property in question. We are required to have 2 appraisals, which we can do. We've already requested one. We haven't gotten that back yet. We would then proceed under the statute. We are directed to try to resolve it, try to mitigate it, try to settle it. But it's kind of hard to do that when you can't find the people that you can do it with. So there is a process under the statute by which we would give public notice in newspapers in the area to notify the world that there is a question about ownership. We are attempting to determine that. We are willing to negotiate with you. But if you don't allow us to do that because we can't find you, then we have the opportunity to have the court actually deed the property to us. That would, in my opinion, be the simplest and the quickest way to accomplish that.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Quick question. What's the status of the bridge then? Is the bridge built on top of the dam? Is it built on another piece of land that's owned by the same people we can't find?
Ed would probably be better to give you the construction process of the bridge, but it's my understanding, Ed, that the dam actually is a support of the bridge.
From the plans that we've seen and looked at, it's twofold. On one section, it is tied into one of the bridge abutments down by the fish ladder section. The others, we haven't been able to determine if the dam and the bridge are together, actually constructed together. Based on the different years when the dam was installed and then the bridge afterwards, I'm going to say probably the early years they did not make that connection. We did, though, once they put the new tide gates in and the fish ladder, they did make that connection on the east side of that bridge to the dam. So some of it is connected construction-wise, and I do believe one section is not.
So while I guess the bridge doesn't necessarily sit on the dam, it sits on stuff which is tied to the dam. Is that fair to say?
It is, from what I can tell from the drawings and from what I can get from past history and speaking to Darren, who's been there, they are on piles down to bedrock or down to substantial soil refusal. Nothing. If you're asking, does one have to work with the other? I think the dam prevents scouring along a lot of those bridge abutments. There's 3 tubes, there's 4 abutments, and I think that dam allows that scouring to not happen. Without the dam there, the footings for the bridge would be exposed.
Okay.
So what is the bridge? Is it a leasehold improvement? What's the status of the bridge?
The bridge is owned by the town. The ownership of the dam is what is uncertain.
But if in fact the bridge sits on land owned by somebody else, doesn't that make it a leasehold improvement? If it's under lease?
The dam is under lease. The dam, we had a 99-year lease on
That's
that.
right, but if the dam, again, the question is what's the status of the bridge if it in fact sits on land that is not owned by the town?
It sits on land that is leased to the town, and we want to either extend that lease, which is going to be very difficult to do because we can't find the owners. So the best way to get that under the ownership of the town, so that the town owns the bridge and the roadway and the dam, would be the condemnation process, which would result eventually in the court deeding over to the town the ownership of the dam. So we would own everything connected to the bridge.
Okay.
And then, quite frankly, that is what we would recommend to you.
So if that condemnation process occurs, does the town have to compensate the current owners?
The town has to evaluate what is being taken. That money, as part of a statement of compensation, which is one of the steps one takes, is deposited with the Superior Court, under the control of the Superior Court. And then theoretically, in a normal case, there could be a process by which the party would contest what the value is. We might assign $100,000, they may say it's worth $500,000. That could be a trial unto itself. In spite of that, one could still continue the process to become the owners of that property. With that property now deposited in court, there is a possibility that one or more of the owners could petition the court to receive a portion of that money based on what they could prove to the court in terms of their title interest. It can be paid, it would
But
eventually be.
each individual owner would have to be able to prove to the court their title interest.
I own it,
In
this is how I
order
own
to
it.
claim, let's say there's $100,000 that was on deposit, right?
Correct.
You have to be able to prove that I own 10% in order to be able to claim $10,000.
That is correct.
Right? So since there are multiple of the owners that we are unable to locate currently, at least those individuals, if they do not surface at some point, are unlikely to claim.
That would be correct also.
And to the extent we didn't go with that process and we just continue to, like the lease expires in the coming months, right? Do you think the lease would just be deemed to have been carried over?
I don't think there would be anyone out there that would have the opportunity or the ability to truly challenge us on it, which would just give us additional time, should we need it, to finish the condemnation process.
Okay.
I don't perceive any damage to the town over that short period of time where we may not have gotten title to it yet and it's still subject to a lease which has expired.
Got it. And maybe, Ed, as we think about this process in connection with the overall timing of work that needs to get done, I think in the spring or summer, you'd done some temporary work, right, in terms of dropping riprap to sort of secure that. How has that held up, and what's your kind of prognosis or recommendation in terms of when we need to move forward with any more permanent repairs?
Well, it's been holding up quite well. We were down there a week and a half ago with FEMA, taking a look at the damage. They had to do an incident report, had an on-site inspection, so we had 4 people from FEMA down there looking at the damage to the dam itself, as well as any of the work that we did for a temporary repair. So, and we've been checking on it every week as we will be doing until we have the repair done. Currently, we're around 33 to 40% complete with the design phase. October 1st, they're supposed to be completing the design and permit to submit to the DEEP for review. At which time they'll continue with the design, but that DEP review can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
We do have, we put a call into DEP. We've already spoken to one of the folks. They know it's an emergency. They know once they get it, if they could, and they will, move it along as quickly as they can.
And in terms of FEMA joining you and looking at this, do you think there's any potential for any type of reimbursement from FEMA?
There's always potential. There's a lot of work that goes into providing them the information that they'd like to see and need to move things forward. Some of the folks that came down and looked at the dam with us were quite knowledgeable. Others were a little new to the process, so you're working with 2 groups of people basically. And right now I'm trying to make sure that we put our best foot forward with whatever we're going to plan to do out there with a design and a repair in replacement of that dam. It hasn't been as smooth as I'd like it to have been.
And would any of this be eligible under the, the small bridge and the state bridge grants that you had mentioned relative to Hanson Road?
I don't believe dams fall under the local bridge program at all, and not under the federal bridge program either. And I think we're still waiting to hear back on whether our insurance company is going to do anything with regards to funding any of the replacement, which is what's holding up FEMA a little bit to start trying to close the book on that project.
But I think regardless, because this damage occurred while we were leasing the dam, the way the lease works, I recall what you said last time, that we're responsible for the upkeep
That is
and
correct.
repair of it.
That's clearly in the lease. As vague as the lease may be, that's clear.
Got it. Okay, any other questions on the?
What are the financial implications to the town for going through the condemnation process?
The financial implications to town would be primarily when a value is assigned to the dam, to have the dam corrected, fixed. That would be, or the value of that dam. Then we would have responsibility to put that dollar amount, deposit that in the court, and that would be the primary responsibility of the town. In addition to that, there could be additional costs incurred by the town to initiate the action for condemnation, to make service under the law, the time that the attorneys that would be involved in processing the matter. But quite frankly, I don't see this as a lengthy contested matter. I don't really see anyone out there that's going to fight us on it. So I would look upon our obligation to take us through the process, which is clearly outlined in the statute, which we have dealt with many times on behalf of the town, and get that finished. I don't see that as being a terribly expensive process. And what I don't know as we sit here is what the value would be assigned by an appraiser to the dam itself. We certainly can let you know when we have that.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Good.
Nice to see you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now item 21. Oh, sorry, item 23. Fiscal 22 year end.
Fiscal 22 year end, I gave you a summary. Overall, we had in the general fund revenues of 156 million, expenditures of about 154.6 million, resulting in a positive result of operations of just under 1.5 million. So we expect our unassigned fund balance will go up by about that much, absent any other auditing adjustments and tweaks here and there. So that would put our fund balance projection for 6/30/2022 at just under 27.5 million, which is 17.28% of the current year adopted budget, and about 8.4 million in excess of the Board of Finance's 12% minimum. So a healthy fund balance, and right kind of in line where we've been all along. What I've given you in the middle of that first page, significant variances from budget. I looked at on the revenue side and the expenditure side. On the revenue, the big one that was really favorable was our town clerk revenue. About $1 million over budget. We didn't take in as much as the year before, and we are seeing those trail off, but we're $1 million over budget on that. Tax collections, $765,000 better than budget, which is typical for our tax collections. Those are always really strong. Building permits, we actually did better than budget this year. That's usually showing the other way. And then the solid waste fees is the other side of that solid waste transfer that we did. The Park and Rec program fees at $77,000 is after the special appropriation that came through. But overall, they were $640,000 better than their original budget on program fees. On the expenditure side, we had a very large surplus in the police department, $584,000, and that's primarily due to vacancies, both for patrol as well as dispatchers. And then other departments were much smaller surpluses. Largest one, other than police department, was Park and Rec at $101,000, and they had some turnover and some vacancies in the year as well.
Jen, regarding the offset to the 273 of the solid waste fees, where on the right side is the offset in terms of the additional expenses?
It's not showing up on a significant unfavorable variance because we just cleaned it up. But it's within the Public Works Department, and they actually, on page... On page 7, Public Works expenditures are there, and they have cleaned everything out and ended the year with a $23 surplus. So normally what we've seen in there is a surplus in these solid waste fees on the expenditure side, but not this year. So they were 178 over on expense, 273 over on better on revenue, so a net of $100,000. Then
Hey,
page
Jen,
2.
can I ask
Yeah.
a quick question? So on the revenue, it shows a variance of 435. It's kind of top of the page, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then when I look at the variances, kind of on the left-hand side there on the revenue, that comes out to about 2.4. Is the difference between kind of the numbers there in that where you highlight all the variances in a favorable way on the revenue, then below we already put revenue surplus? Is it kind of the 2.4 plus the 400,000 up top? Is your 2.8 kind of below? Is that how that's shown? Is that making sense what I'm asking? Like I'm looking at the revenue and I'm seeing 2.4 million of favorable, but then over to the variance, it's 435.
So the variance up at the top
Yep.
is against the revised budget, which includes, we budgeted 3.2 million appropriation from fund balance. So that's
yeah.
captured in these
Yeah.
other
Yep.
items, special appropriations out of fund balance.
Okay.
So that's why
I knew there was some.
it doesn't look like we did as well as we really did.
Yeah.
So it's revised budget versus original budget.
It's actual against the revised is the variance.
But then the one below that where it says significant variances, that's versus the original budget.
No, that's actual versus revised as well, but, so what you would see if we really wanted to be specific about it is in that variances from budget, we should also have one that shows we were 3.2 million less on what we took from fund balance, because we don't actually take it from fund balance, it's kind of a placeholder, and it just flows through with all the other revenues. and
That's the missing
expenses.
piece, yeah. I knew it was something there, I was just kind of
Yeah,
trying to remember how it worked.
There's no good way to present it.
No, I don't think
that
there
doesn't
is,
trip
right.
people up.
I thought it was the 2.7 below in the revenue, but it's the 3.2 like you said.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And a good chunk of the things, when we're looking at money that was sort of transferred from excesses this year to what we appropriated for fiscal '23, things like we effectively, I recall, rolled forward the surplus that we had in the police budget because the expectation was that the chief was going to fill those positions.
Right. And then on page 2, I just gave you the summary for the sewer operating fund and the parking operations fund. Both of them ended the year favorable, which was a little bit surprising for the parking operations fund because that's definitely struggled with the drop-off in commuters during COVID. But the sewer operating fund has about an additional 87,000 going into fund balance. Their fund balance is just over 2 million on a $4 million budget for sewer operations, which is a little bit different kind of fund. So at 50%, that's a very healthy fund balance. And parking operations will be contributing about $39,000 to fund balance, which will put us at about $470,000 on an $824,000 budget. So again, a healthy fund balance on that. And then the following pages, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 give you just detail on our different revenue categories and expenditures departments, budgeted versus actual. Any questions on fiscal 22 before we move on to 23?
Just a curiosity question for me, of the tax collection revenue favorable amount, How much of that is the 25 basis points conservatism that we build in?
Very little of it. Actually, let me take that back, no. So it's a combination of that as well as Kathy had budgeted conservatively for her supplemental billings.
Okay.
So if I recall, those were about 200,000. So yeah, I would say the majority of it is the 25 basis points.
And how much of it, the 24 basis points versus the actual grand list versus what we projected the grand list to be?
That I did not take a look at. And I do think this year, I'm trying to picture what we had for correction, additions and reductions. I think we added to the grand list and that it was probably higher, but I'll take a look at that. So some of that would be if there was grand list growth above what we had put in the budget. All right, fiscal 23 is off to a great start. Nothing really fascinating, but property taxes in July were strong. We've collected 53% of our budget. Pretty typical. In the last 5 years, we've been at 51.63%, so a little ahead of the 5-year average, but good strong collections in July, which we love to see. And town clerk revenue, they are at 26% of their budget collected. The 5-year average is a little bit skewed from the couple of years that we had really strong collections. But in my note, I pointed out that the August 2022 collections are about 50% of what we had in August last year. So we definitely are seeing a slowdown on their revenue from real estate transactions. In the other revenues, one thing that I do want to point out, what is in there is Joan's investment income. And 2 months into the year, she's pretty much made her budget because we put that together when the world was a very different place. And then the world kind of changed in May as we adopted the budget. So she's taking a look at all of her rates and what she has invested, and she's going to come up with a projection, but it's going to be significantly higher than what we budgeted. So next month I'll have an idea for you of what that additional funding might be. But we just wanted to make you aware that there's going to be a significant amount of investment income that we get, assuming that things continue as they are.
Well, rates went from 0 to 3%
Yeah.
generally, so.
Hey, Jen, I think Joan last time did a schedule for us. Can we just get maybe a repeat of that? It's not too much. I think she showed kind of holdings and what we had our money in.
Yeah, I think she sent something around, I think
Yeah,
yesterday or
She
something.
definitely sent something around.
So she does a portfolio report every month?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, I have her most recent one and I'll forward it to
Yeah,
the
I think
board.
love to see it.
And relative to, just on that note, the couple, if you recall, 2 meetings ago, I think we approved the T-bill
Yeah.
purchase program. I think she's already purchased 2.
Yes.
It went smoothly, and
Awesome.
so I think each one was approximately $1 million or so.
Yeah.
And she's, I think, going to continue to.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. See
Move
what
any
you
more.
got in the portfolio on that.
Okay, I'll send
T-bill
that around.
yields are definitely looking good. I bought some this week.
Oh, what you said?
T-bills.
Yeah, I was looking at the T note of 2 years is just about 4 at this point.
That's what I bought.
Yeah.
Then on the expenditure side, everything is tracking as we would expect for this time of year. No big surprises, nothing scary or anything on the horizon that we know of yet. There's really not much to talk about because we're just beginning the year.
See, the harbor master has spent nothing so far.
Not yet. I'm sure he'll get cranking soon. Let's see. Oh, on page 12, we have ARPA funds. And the total grant received is now 4.3 million because we received our NEU portion. And we can expect to receive our final funding in, I believe, October. And then we'll have our full 6 million in hand. And we have started spending. Altogether, we have spent 112,000, but people are doing bidding, getting quotes, getting ready to move on their projects. So I expect that we'll start seeing more expenditures out of the ARPA funds very soon.
Jen, you said 4.3, and what'd you say the rest would be in?
We'll get the remainder in October. I think we're supposed to get, I have October 15th in my mind. And that'll be about 2.1 million.
Wow, why did I have in my head that I thought it was, some was coming in 23 and parts of 24? I guess I'm misremembering that, lack of a better word. I thought it
Yeah, we
was-
got the first half in June of 21.
Yeah.
And then the second half was supposed to be around a year later.
Oh.
It's been a little bit more than a year.
I think we need to have it spent by
Yeah.
24.
You know, I'm gonna make a
Yeah, I
note
think that-
on here
that's
of when
what
we
I'm
have to
thinking.
have it committed by and when we
Expenditure.
have to have it expended by, because
Yeah.
I can never remember that. So
Yeah.
I'll add a note to here so that we always have that.
Yeah, and we should probably, when we're getting close to these sort of allocated,
Yeah.
make sure that there needs to be any reallocation, that
Yeah.
we've kind of visited that.
All right. That is all that I have.
Okay, next one is the approval of minutes from the August 16th, 2022 meeting. I think this is our first official approval of minutes under the new format,
Yeah.
where it's a little bit more descriptive of just of the actions that we take and laying out the motions. I personally love the new format, a lot easier to review and,
Very clean.
yeah, very clean. Okay, if there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Board of Finance meeting minutes from August 16th, 2022. Rob moves. David seconds. All those in favor?
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Okay, all those against? No. Abstaining? One. Abstaining? Okay, one, so 4-0-1. Motion passes. Okay, special assignments, committee reports, technology.
Technology, we have broken into subcommittees. I'm not sure if I talked about that last time, which is really kind of interesting and nice allocation of resources. Next time we meet, I'll have a little bit more of a written update, kind of what we've broken into and what the topics are. So like one of the things, I'm on the IT efficiency committee, and we're about to send out a survey to Darien employees to see what they like and dislike. So that's kind of just one little sliver of what we're doing. You're on these calls, right, Jen?
I
That's right.
am. I'm on the citizen service subcommittee.
Yeah.
So we're looking at enhancing the citizen interaction with us on technology.
Interface, interaction, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put something together so the group can see kind of what IT has been broken into. So everybody kind of owns a piece, which is really cool and kind of efficient. No pun intended. And audit, met with the group, the audit team. Gosh, I forgot their names all of a sudden because they've changed their names.
CLA.
Yeah.
Huh?
CLA.
CLA, thank you. No issues of importance, I think, to talk about. Was pretty normal audit call. And we've approved them for next year already, right?
No.
Or for this, or-
In May, we approved them to do this
This
work.
year,
Yeah.
okay. Are they up next, are they the rotation they have? or is
I
it-
think we have 1 year
One?
left, but let me
Yeah.
double check on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if we signed a 2 or 3 year with them. Definitely 2.
Yeah,
It might have been 3.
I think it was 3, but I'll
Yeah,
double check.
'cause I think it was 3 with the new partner.
Yes.
They had signed.
I like the group. I think they do. I mean, you deal with them every day, but they seem like a competent and smart group.
Yep.
And yeah, that's kind of what you were in the call. Anything to add on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of the discussion was all around like the leasing and/or subscription.
Yeah, that's right.
Seemed to be the sort of item du jour for this budget.
The accounting gods always seem to put something else on the agenda. Once it was leases, now it looks like subscriptions, what goes on the balance sheet, what doesn't, what has to be disclosed. So it just keeps people in business.
It's amazing. The people that write the rules actually get to
Audit.
audit and charge extra fees.
Mission creep.
No comments on the peanut gallery.
Creep.
On HHR,
HHR?
we're, in the quiet but very busy phase. The design committee has been working significantly with the architects and with the administration to make sure that the evolution of design meets all of the ed specs and all the things that they want. My understanding is we are to see a set of plans in our next meeting, which will be next week. And then my goal is to put together a timeline of exactly what happens, thereafter through the end of the year and into the early part of next year, so I can share that with you guys next time.
Okay. When do you think the first sort of material, need for funds would be, if you just had to ballpark it?
I'm not sure because there's two things, right? Construction is not starting until end of school in this school year, right? So right at the end of school. But there has been talk about pre-purchasing certain items because of the long lead times. The problem is until we have a finalized design, you can't pre-purchase anything. So
Okay.
I think they're trying to get that design finalized. My expectation, I believe the expectation is they'll have a finalized design sometime in October.
Okay.
So the long and short is, depending on when the payments actually have to occur when you pre-purchase, if you have to make some down payment at the time of the pre-purchase, or if you wait until you take delivery, and I don't know exactly how that process works.
Well, we have the bond resolution passed, and we can always sort of, if you will, draw down from the general fund, kind of borrow from that
Right.
against a bond appropriation, but, it's a $77 million project, so we'll have to keep an eye on that, connection with bonding projects. I think, Dan's not here, but Oxbridge, I'll chime in a couple things. They had the ribbon cutting ceremony last weekend. I've been to the school a few times. There are pictures all over. I mean, seems like a complete success in terms of the building side of it. There's obviously more work to be done, including demolition and so forth now, but it's...
The old building is basically down, and Dr. Hadley summed it up fairly well last night, which is the kids' only response to the new building is, "It's awesome."
yeah.
So if the kids like it and it fosters the learning environment, it's going to be good. So.
Yep. So kudos to all those, Dan and John before that, and that have worked on that. I think it's a great.
And just to follow up, we all know that it is on time and under budget.
Yep.
So
That's how we like
Well
them.
done. Really well done.
putting a lot of pressure on me.
So,
Bars up here.
So I can give a short update. The Board of Ed, as you know, is in negotiations with the teachers over their 3-year salary, 3-year contract is coming up at the end of this fiscal year and so forth. So that's ongoing. There've been a handful of meetings, more meetings this week and so forth coming up. But the sort of negotiation part of the session is kind of coming to an end. So.
Great.
Ultimately, any agreement needs to be ratified by the union and so forth, so it takes a bit of time, but That's it. Paul?
Last week, Governor Lamont announced a $150 million program for indoor air quality in the schools. However, applications have to be into the state by December 1st, and it's basically a first come, first served type of project. So a lot of, at least in Trumbull, getting all the town bodies to vet it by that time is a little tight.
Okay.
But I haven't talked with Rich about it.
Okay.
And then on another note, on Thursday, September 8th, Monica and I participated in the Aquarian public hearing. Comments are due to Pura by October 25th. So,
Do you mentioned that program for school air quality. Do you think there's any chance that the HHR project would be eligible for some of that? Because roughly 27% of the aggregate cost is going to be for mechanical and HVAC related stuff.
I would think so. You
All right.
you have to go through like the building committee process and go through I don't know, the acronym is OSCAR.
Okay.
I believe you have to go through them.
All right, well, let me sic the consultants on that tomorrow.
I think there was a press release on it, wasn't it, like a week ago or so?
Yes.
I can forward it to
Press
you, maybe.
release.
Why don't you
Yeah.
make sure that the consultants know, because we're only getting, is it like 5% in terms of state match on the construction cost? So if this can pay for a greater percentage of it, it feels like it's definitely worth.
I'll probably find out some more on Friday because I have a quarterly business manager of Connecticut meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great because I should chase any possible.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I'll send that to Rich and Alan and Duke,
Okay.
just make sure that,
Well,
obviously
he's
they're-
probably aware of it, but,
Okay.
yeah.
I think that's it. In terms of chairman's remarks, the only thing I'll make is a public service announcement that, please keep an eye out on all your town email for spam type emails. Jeff Adams has set up sort of a town-wide notification program when something's sort of circulating around, but just be careful sort of what you open, what you click on. There's been a lot of instances of trying to spoof, any other elected official trying to get you to sort of agree to something, so just
I have a comment along those lines. While I was on vacation in New Hampshire, my bank account was hacked to the extent of low 5 figures. Somebody forged a check, and the police were very helpful in tracking it down. So I got funds restored to my account, and I'd like to single out the officer in charge, Bryce Brown, who also studied under the current principal of Trumbull High School. So, and and the chief commented there was somebody else in town that got stung in a cryptocurrency type thing for $250,000. And the police have no clue to how to track that down.
well, lesson for everybody, be vigilant about what you open, kind of what you click on and so forth. And
Yeah.
I think kind of keep your eyes out, because we may, in the not so distant future, sort of all get asked to maybe click on and do a little sort of 15-minute video education program about making sure you know what you're clicking on and so forth to remind us. So that's it. Okay. Anything else?
Or are we going to discuss some of the other flood remediation work?
Yeah, so I'd sent an email around. The Board of Selectmen is, the staff is working on sort of a larger presentation to the Board of Selectmen on October 3rd. So I think rather than having them all kind of come here, we're going to have them, and I think, we should either attend and or watch to kind of hear about that. And then if we have more, I guess, financial related questions out of that, we could always have, a subset of that group. But I think it's going to be a fairly holistic.
It's going to be a very robust presentation, and I highly encourage people to, if you can make it, terrific. If you can't, it'll be on our website, and it will be front and center for you to take a look at.
Okay, and that's Monday, October 3rd? Great. Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. David moves. Rob seconds. All those in favor? It's unanimous. 9 on the dot.